Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and my guest today is somebody who comes on Fresh Perspectives about once a year. She is a medium. She does a form of energy healing with tuning forks. She's a spiritual life coach and a violinist in the Erie Philharmonic Orchestra. And her name is Colleen Vanderzeiden, and she has come on today. We're going to talk about a book she has written that just came out this February. It's called Courageously You, Magical Mind Games to Get Unstuck and Reignite Your Joy. So I guess the only place people can get it is on Amazon.
You can get it anywhere books are sold, basically.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay. So anyways, Colleen is here to talk about that. Thank you for coming on today, Colleen.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always fun.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? Okay, it took you quite a while to write this book, didn't it?
It took me a very long time to write this book. And it's really funny. My daughter just turned 26 in January.
Oh my gosh, really? Is she that old?
It's amazing. Time flies. And it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I had gone to several book writing conferences, from publishers and stuff to figure out how to do it. But I didn't really know what my topic was. I knew I wanted to help people, but I wasn't sure what it was. And so I would talk to my daughter and say, I'm going to write a book. And she's like, what are you going to write it about? What are you going to write about? So I finally started writing a book and did a book proposal. And then it wasn't right. I looked at it later and it wasn't the right book. So I set it aside for a year or two. And then I said to my daughter again, well, I'm going to start writing my book. And she looked at me and basically rolled her eyes and said, right, you're never going to write the book.
I've heard this story before.
She said, you've been talking about this as long as I've been alive, and which really motivated me, actually. And at that point, though, I'd been doing radio shows since 2016, hosting them. So I had all these different strategies that I wanted to share with people. So in the beginning of 2020, I made my goal to write the rough draft. So in 6 weeks, I wrote the rough draft.
Wow.
And I took, old radio shows and different ideas, and it took a while to get it organized and get the layout right. It took a long time to get the outline. So I did it in 2020, and then I didn't really have much time to edit it as the year went on. So then in 2021, I hired an editor, but I had to go through it myself and re-edit, and I found out the book was so bad. It was just, a very rough draft. And that's how it's supposed to be, right? And so in 2021, I went through and edited and edited and edited, and the editor helped me. She taught me a lot about writing, and she taught me a lot about making sure the book moved. You're reading it, and you want to keep reading it.
Right.
And so we spent 2021 editing it and then doing everything else that goes with publishing a book that I had no idea about, cover design and everything. There was so much involved. And then finally, yes, it came out. And it was one of the proudest moments when I said to my daughter, here's my book. And I would send her, she has a writing degree, so I would send her paragraphs every now and then, say, this sentence isn't feeling right to me, what do you think? And so she was also helping me with editing. So it's taken about 20-something years for this book to come into the public.
Yeah, I thought about writing a book at some point in time until I found out how complicated it could be.
Ignorance is bliss. Started and not know.
Well, then it turned into, well, I guess I won't. I have a television program instead.
There you go. It works.
Okay, so, you seem like such a together person. When I started reading the book, I found out that in your past, before you got as enlightened as you are now, that there were people taking advantage of you You know, like the person who tried to prevent you selling your house.
Yes. And you know, there are so many stories in there. And way back when I woke up, I call it, in the year 2000, and I tell the story in the first chapter of the book where I got the message to be who I am, and I didn't realize who I was. And going on that journey, that adventure, I now call it an adventure of self-discovery, finding out who I was and realizing I had been trained, programmed, conditioned to please other people, to set aside my own needs. And so many people do this, especially women. Men do it in a different way. Because they have been taught not to express their emotions. You know, be a big boy, boys don't cry. They've been taught that, so they've learned they've been conditioned to suppress how they feel. Women have been conditioned to suppress how they feel in terms of trying to please everybody else. And take care of everybody else in different ways. Sometimes we feel like we have to. And so many times that turns into that self-critical voice, and we lose our power. And when I found out that person was blocking the sale of my house, you know, somebody came to look at it and they were renting it, and I heard from my neighbor.
She was supposed to have left the house.
She was supposed to have left the house.
For the visitation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I liked her. She was a really good person. And
the renter?
Yeah. The husband, I think, was probably more in control of things there.
Oh,
and
maybe.
I didn't really know him as well. And I had gone to visit my neighbor for dinner, and she told me the real estate agent had told her that the person was there and was saying all these things were wrong with the house. I was so upset because this was at the time where houses really weren't selling, and I needed to sell it. I wasn't living in it anymore, and I didn't want to be renting it out. It's not any fun to do. And so I immediately, when I came home, I called the lawyer. And he told me how to take care of it, and I took care of it so fast. Somebody actually said to me, that is the fastest I've ever seen you make a decision, in 24 hours. Normally, what I might have done, and so many people do, is talk myself out of action. I didn't want to upset the other person, you know. Maybe it wasn't really the way it was. And so you start to kind of question what's real, you know. And I trusted the real estate agent. You know, she's a person you can trust, and I knew she wouldn't lie. And my neighbor's not going to lie either, and pass that information on to me. And so because I have gone through so much of my life to try to figure out where my power is and to stand and speak my truth, I did it there. And I still struggle sometimes with speaking my truth, but at least now I know how to get back into doing it, being in my power.
Yeah, I know. I remember being young, you know, like my late teens and like that, and or even younger than that, when I was a little kid, and you know, things just wouldn't feel right somehow. There'd be like red flags coming up. And yet, because people were pressuring me, I wound up doing things I never should have done.
Yes.
So,
so many people get stuck in that and trapped in that because we do want to make other people happy, and so
we don't want them to be mad at us.
Yeah, we want to be liked, you know, throughout our lives. So many of us, everybody, wants to fit in and belong and be accepted. And so to make somebody upset or to cause a conflict is hard for people, you know, and sometimes we have to do that if we're going to stay in our truth. And when we do things to please other people or keep them happy, eventually it catches up with us and we don't feel like ourselves anymore. And then we do have to make choices to get back into our power somehow.
Oh, yeah. You know, now, I've been noticing since I've been old enough to be on have Medicare and like that, because I'm over the age of 65. Somewhere along the line, I've noticed that you go for this annual wellness exam that's like supposed to be free, although it's not a very good exam. I don't know. You're probably not old enough to have gone for one of those yet, but It's like, it's kind of silly, really. They don't do all that much at this annual wellness exam. You have to go a second time in the year, you know, in order to get a full exam. But anyway, they've been charging, the first few years, they were charging $3 a year for this. And now they've upped it to $5 every year. It's something called a risk assessment, where they charge you this money, and you know, it's not a lot of money, but it's the point, the whole point. So I finally talked to somebody in the billing department this week at the doctor's office. I got into the billing department over the phone. But anyway, I'm going, you know, I only drank alcohol. What the risk assessment is all they do is ask you if you drink alcoholic beverages or smoke, is what it is. And they charge you $5 for this. And I said to her, you know, I only drank alcoholic beverages for just a few years when I was first old enough, and I quit right away because I didn't like the way it made me feel. And I never got in the habit of smoking. And that, you know, and all of these decades have gone by. I told her I'm 72 years old now. There's no way I'm going to start doing these things. Right. Is there some reason that I have to pay $5 a year? So apparently they do that with everybody. Somewhere along the line, somebody dreamed up a simple way they could make a lot of extra money. I know $5 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but when you consider how many people are asked that question, it's a lot of money. Those $5 add up. Somebody's making a lot of money just to ask people if they drink alcoholic beverages or smoke, you know. And I talked her into putting it in my records, you know, that I said there's no way I'm going to start. After all these decades, why would I start now? And right. You know, so she said she was going to put it in the system that I said that I'll never start smoking or drinking, you know, and that they shouldn't charge me for it. So that was something, rather than just going along and paying $5 every year to be asked a couple of stupid questions. You know, yeah. Just say it's not an issue with me.
Well, and also speaking your truth with that, you know, so many times that's something we would set aside, and we'd say, well, it's not that big a deal, so I'm not going to bring it up. But every time we don't speak it, it becomes harder to speak later. But if we practice speaking the smaller truths, then the bigger ones, where we have a relationship issue or a job issue or whatever kind of issue comes in, when the bigger ones come, then it's easier to speak it if we've done it on the little ones.
Well, you know, the woman on the phone from the billing department was very nice about it. You know, she was very nice about it.
Is this your doctor's office that does this?
Yeah, yeah.
I'd switch doctors.
Well, the whole point is I don't really need that much from doctors because I've lived a healthy lifestyle and I don't really have a bunch of health problems. So, but anyways,
right.
I just thought it just seemed so stupid. So for those of you in the viewing audience, if you don't drink or smoke, I would bring this up to the people at your doctor's office.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and it is a part, like the reason I labeled the book and titled it Courageously You is to be yourself. And the only way you can be yourself is to know who you are and to know what is true for you. You know, And lots of times when I tell people the title of the book, Courageously You, they go, oh, I like that, you know, because how many times do we get stuck in something, you know? You could have decided, oh, you know, it's not enough trouble, and so it's a little bit of like fear creeping in. It's not enough trouble.
You don't know. You don't know how the people you're going to be bringing it up to are going to respond. They might scream at you or something,
right?
you know, and you just don't know how people are going to react. But I must have put it in an exact correct way or something, that the woman was as nice to me as she was when I brought it up.
Right. And of course, as we get older, we realize that being nice is usually the best way to go about a conflict, you know.
Yeah.
And some people haven't realized that if you look on social media, but most people realize that's the way to do it.
Yeah, well, you do say in the book, I think that I read something in there about where you said it doesn't mean, courageously you doesn't necessarily mean that you're not experiencing any fear about facing the issue, whatever it happens to be. But
yes, sometimes people think courageous means fearless.
Right.
And courageous actually means that you're going to take action. You decide to take action, even if you're nervous, you have a little bit of fear, you might be a little bit concerned, but you know so well in your heart that it's the truth at that moment, so you have to speak it or do it or whatever it is. Sometimes people won't do something as simple as, you know how remember when we were at school, you know, we were young, and if you didn't have the right clothes on, and the other kids might say something about your pants, you know, maybe you had a growth spurt and your pants were too short, and people would go, oh, you have high waters. Remember those things happening? I don't know if that happened when you were in school, but kids can be real bullies with that. So that is another form of the conditioning and programming that makes us lose who we are, because then we're more concerned about how we appear to other people.
Well, you know, when I was a little girl, nobody had warned me about this bullying before I started school. I had no idea that bullying was something that happened. You know, during those first few years of my life before I started school, nobody had ever acted negative towards me. You know, I was a cute little girl, and nobody really picked on me or anything. And so, I mean, that was really new to me. And there was this one situation, and I brought it up on Fresh Perspectives before a couple of times with, a mental health person that I was interviewing, that when I was in first grade, there was a little third grade boy that rode the same school bus as me, and he wanted to be my boyfriend. So, like, when I was in first and second grade, I had a boyfriend that was like in third and fourth grade for a couple of years. And I remember getting off the school bus one morning, and I had to walk past his classroom, the room that he was stopping at, the grade that he was in. And as I'm walking down the rest of the way to the hall to my first grade classroom, he was whistling at me. And there was this girl from my class standing outside of the door to our room. And she asked me who that was. And I told her he was my boyfriend. And she gave me, have you ever heard the expression, if looks could kill, I'd be dead?
Oh, yes.
It was like, she gave me a really dirty look, you know, I mean, it wasn't nice. And the rest of the time, all through growing up in school, she always tried to, start trouble for me. She'd be working at getting other kids to be mean to me and stuff like that. And to begin with, I didn't know I probably should have, said something to my mother or something, to get after the teachers. But, nobody tells you any of this stuff. And so then, anyway, when there were people that were picking on me, I thought, well, what if it's, then you start to have self-esteem issues. And, but like I was telling that mental health professional, it's like it didn't occur to me until I was all grown up and maybe in my 30s or something like that, that she must have seen me as a threat. Mm-hmm. And that's why she always did that, was because I had a boyfriend, which shouldn't have been a big deal, And I asked this mental health professional, I said, well, how would somebody that young already have that figured out? That was maybe a threat that somebody had a boyfriend in first grade, I never thought about any of that stuff before. It never even occurred to me.
And what's interesting with those interactions we have as children, mm-hmm. they end up formulating beliefs about mm-hmm. ourselves. Mm-hmm. We interpret it and we make a belief, but we're not doing it consciously. We don't understand. Mm-hmm. And I told the story in my book about how I went out for ice cream with my father, and we didn't have much money, and so I had a quarter, and so we're sitting there, and I just pushed the quarter to the edge of the counter, and then a teenager to my left ended up swiping the quarter and just took it.
Somebody that was older than you.
Older than us, and I was with my father, so I was probably, 8 years old or something. Mm-hmm. And so this teenager took the quarter, and I remember even then, and I was a very shy child, but I remember even then thinking, okay, wait a minute, that's not right, that's my quarter, I should have that. But my father didn't ask for it back.
He didn't
say
confront
anything.
The girl. No.
And he could have easily said, hey, wait a minute, that's our quarter. Give it back. And she probably would have, because he was an adult, right?
Right,
She was a teenager. But he didn't do that. And I didn't think much of it, of course, while I was growing up, until later, when I realized that he was very unassertive and didn't speak his truth, didn't stand up for himself. Mm-hmm. And so that situation became part of the belief that I shouldn't stand up for myself. So we all have had certain situations in life where something has happened and our mind, trying to make sense of it, has turned it back on ourselves. Mm-hmm. That there's a way we need to behave differently, so we don't cause waves, so we aren't causing problems, and we learn not to stand up for ourselves. And that's all part of that conditioning. We don't even know it's happened. Mm-hmm. For you, having something like that happen could really affect your self-esteem, because then you think, well, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't she like me? Mm-hmm. He likes me. Why doesn't she like me? Mm-hmm. So and then that'll trigger that voice of the inner critic.
Yeah.
And everybody has one of those that likes to tell you how you're not a good person in so many different ways. You're not smart enough, pretty enough, nice enough, nobody likes you, etc. And lots of times when I'm talking to coaching clients or on my radio shows and stuff, I'll talk about the different ways to look at that voice differently and try to minimize it. And some of the magical mind games in my book are to help that,
Yeah.
You want people like strategies. People like the how-tos. They want to know how to do something.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, it really is. So, of course, from the incident when you went to get ice cream with your dad, you probably learned something that day. You probably learned that you don't shove your quarter out there where people can grab it, right? You learn that you wait until the person that you have to pay for the ice cream is ready. It's time to pay the person.
There's a lot of different beliefs that could have come from that, too. The one for me was that I shouldn't stand up for myself. I shouldn't be assertive. The other beliefs other people might have taken from something like that might have been that teenage girls are mean, or older people will steal your stuff, or somebody might have projected something onto their father, and I could have, if I had been a different person, I might have turned it into, oh, what a horrible person, I can't believe he didn't get that back for me, and you know how sometimes people blame their parents for everything, so there are a lot of different takeaways people could create without awareness. Usually it just happens.
You wind up with the incident that I just mentioned about myself is you wind up starting to think that that people in general, don't like you.
Yes.
And there must be something wrong with you, because people don't like you, except that as an adult, I found out that I've made a lot of friends in my adult life. So,
Right.
So somewhere along the line, I figured out that it's not necessarily true. So.
Yeah, and still we can be triggered by other people in other situations, even as adults. And I have a lot of clients who get triggered by things. And it's always comes back to, when I'm talking to them, it always comes back to that not good enough feeling, which, takes me back to the courageously you, because it is all about being yourself and living intentionally, knowing who you are, what you want, what you believe in. And some people think that there's no way to get there. Sometimes people will say things like, I don't know who I am. I really don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. And I'll say to them, well, what did you like to do as a child? That's usually a pretty good hint as something that you enjoy doing. And sometimes they'll say, well, I don't know. And so the beginning of my book is all about discovering who they really are. We want to find out, like, what are your positive qualities? That I have a friend who, I have the 50 things you love about yourself, magical
50.
mind game.
I was just thinking that before you said it.
Yes.
It could take a while to come up with
Well,
50, a list of 50.
Let me tell you what the magical mind games are. So I named them magical mind games because you know how our mind plays tricks on us?
Right.
And we call them mind games, right?
Right.
Or people play mind games with us.
Right.
So I have kind of taken that and twisted it and made them magical mind games because we're reclaiming the power of our mind and shifting our perspectives, looking at life from a different angle, looking at ourselves from a different angle as well. So when we do that, I call them magical because they create profound shifts, just changing how we're doing these things. So all these things are called magical mind games. So the 50 things, it used to be 100, and then I changed it to 50. So I have all of my clients do this, and it's one of the first things we do in the book, not right away, but as in the first few chapters. And we discover 50 things you love about yourself. And I tell people to do it like a brainstorming session. So not to sit there and think. But this is a very valuable exercise because I have a friend who tried to do it and she could only come up with 4.
Oh, 4, wow.
4 things.
Wow.
And she said that every time she came up with something, basically that voice in her head told her it wasn't true. Right? And so some people really struggle with this. So as I was thinking about this, so whenever I do this in a group or a retreat or a workshop or something, whenever it is, it's very interesting to see what happens as people do it, because we can come up with a few things right away, and then we kind of start getting stuck because we have to look at life a little bit differently, look at ourselves differently. And we don't realize sometimes that we have been very persistent, or we've been dedicated, or maybe we're flexible, maybe we're very nurturing. And we don't see that because what happens is the good qualities within ourselves, we say, well, I've always been like that, or I'm like that. So we dismiss and minimize our positive qualities. And that leads to more of not owning them. So being forced to, in some ways, come up with 50 things is a really great exercise to discover who you really are. And when your inner critic disagrees with you, so let's say you say to yourself that you think you're a hard worker, and your inner critic says, no, you're not. You procrastinate, you're really lazy, you don't get everything done when you should, your list is too long, and you know how that voice goes. And so when your inner critic speaks up, that means you are a hard worker. And it's just trying to keep you the way you've always been, in that lower level, I'm going to call it. And so this can be a very important thing to do, because when you recognize your inner critic is talking you out of it, then you know this is very important. So then I have my clients do an affirmation or an intention where you say, I am a hard worker. I am dedicated. I am persistent. And the more we say that, the more we begin to recognize it's true, and then we own it. And then we're shifting our self-perspective. And once we do that, it's easier to muffle that inner critic voice, because once it pops in and says, well, you're a procrastinator, you can go, no, I'm not. I did this and this and this and this, and I'm getting my work done. I am a hard worker. And then that story changes, and then you believe you're a different person. And then you're back into being your courageous self.
Well, you know, one thing that I've noticed over the course of my adult life is I'll take an interest in learning how to do something, and then quite often it'll turn out that I'm actually quite good at it, at what it is that I'm learning how to do, you know, and once I get it, I get it for like forever, you know, that I know how to do this particular thing. And so it really helps, you know, because that now you're watching yourself, and you know that a lot of things that people have told you about yourself were never really true.
Yes.
When you realize that you actually have the ability to learn how to do things and to do a really good job at them.
Yes. And that's, you know, my book with the Magical Mind Games, it's a lot of learning about who you are, but also strategies to help people handle stuff when something happens, you know. And I had a friend's daughter who was struggling in school because other people were jealous of her and they were really putting her down for her work, you know. And I had clients, and I tell some of those stories in the book, and I've had clients who took their job seriously, and then coworkers who were, well, what are you doing that for? And so now then my clients are feeling upset, you know. They feel upset because they know the other person or the other people aren't speaking the truth, but yet they're still caught in the emotion of it. And I like to tell people that the emotions will lead you to your truth. So you look at the emotion, you go, okay, I'm getting upset about this. Why am I getting upset? And of course, we're triggering the not good enough thing. But some of the strategies in the book are also about how to look at the other people differently, how to look at the situation differently, so you don't get caught in the emotions.
Yeah, you know, a lot of times when people are not being nice to you, it's because, and I've read like this in, if you really pay attention to them, and I've read this in articles and things that were written by psychologists and like that, that, like for instance, teenagers that bully other teenagers, and what I wind up reading is that they do that because they have self-esteem problems of their own.
Yes.
And so they bully other people as a way to try to make themselves feel better about themselves.
Right.
That it's actually very common for teenagers to have self-esteem issues.
Yes. And with everything that's happening on social media, you know, people are really getting a lot of that energy now thrown at them, bullying energy and really mean stuff. And when you're secure in your power and you know who you are, it's easier to detach from that. One of my favorite magical mind games I love to use all the time is if somebody's being a jerk to me, is to kind of rewrite that story. You know, what is motivating them to be a jerk, you know? And sometimes I'll start out with crazy interpretations, you know, like they are an alien and they don't know better. Or I used to say they were attacked by a kitten, you know, and so they
attacked by
a kitten. It used to be a giraffe, but then there was this story in the news about somebody being attacked by a giraffe. So I was like, oh, I can't do that one now. So I did attacked by a kitten because, you know, a kitten, granted, they could claw you a little bit, but they're not going to hurt you that badly. So I'll say that, you know, they were attacked by a kitten, so they hate all living things or something. So we start out with something that's a really strange, off-the-wall interpretation. So you kind of can step back from the emotion and step back from that person's bullying or hatred or whatever it might be, and kind of go, oh, well, it's just the way they are because they hate all living beings. And then you kind of go, okay, whatever. And then eventually you can move into a better understanding and more compassionate one where you might realize they're just insecure, or that they've been hurt so badly that they don't know how to be nice to people, or maybe they're just worried about something and they don't know how to respond to you at that moment. So a lot of the magical mind games are things like that to help reframe how we're looking at something. It's nice.
Yeah. Now, there was one magical mind game that I was supposed to remind you of.
Yes, there's a couple that are fun. The first one in the book is really the most important one, and it's called I Choose. And this helps people recognize that they do have the power to make a choice. So we think we're stuck, and part of the title, Magical Mind Games, to get unstuck and reignite your joy. We're here living alive in the physical world because we're supposed to be happy here. We're supposed to have meaning. We're supposed to have joy.
Right.
And we can't get there because we're stuck in things. So we're stuck in those beliefs of how we're not good enough. We're stuck in situations we don't want to be in. We're stuck in emotions, et cetera, et cetera. So people think when they're stuck, they don't have a choice, no matter what they're stuck in. So the first one is the I choose. I have the power to choose. And it's simply describing your day to start out with. And you just describe how your day is going. And it can be as simple as, I'm choosing to get up late this morning.
Oh.
Okay. I'm choosing to say I'm tired. I'm choosing to be angry. So somebody has triggered you. You're actually choosing to be angry. Now, you can be upset, you can have your emotions, but if you're stuck in them, that's where we have the problems. So I'm choosing to be angry. And then when people start describing their day, they realize they really do have the power of choice. It's simple to start that way. I'm choosing to drive down this road even. And it's nothing threatening to do that. It's nothing threatening to say I'm choosing to get in my car, I'm choosing to start the car, and that's nothing. So we can do that easily. It's when we start saying, I'm choosing to hold my anger at my ex. I had a client the other day who was so mad at her ex-husband, well, actually his past husband, and mother. And so they're both on the other side. So this is a mediumship session, not a coaching session. She is screaming at them.
Oh,
through me, the physical
client. Your client is
screaming
at people that have passed away.
Right? Okay, so she is stuck yelling at them. She's stuck in anger at them still. She has been stuck in trying to prove herself to them all this time. She's so stuck there. She's like really in this anger. Nothing I said could move her into understanding, nothing they said either, could move her into understanding that they got it from the other side. They understood now. They realized what they had done. They were trying to apologize. She wasn't willing to accept it. So she's stuck in this anger until she chooses to look at it from a different perspective. She is never going to move on. Just because somebody was mean to us doesn't mean we have to hold on to that energy for the rest of our lives. We have the choice to forgive them. We have the choice to let it go. We have the choice to look at them and say, okay, I know you did the best you could while you were here. It wasn't good enough for me, but I'm not going to hold on to that energy anymore. And people don't realize they can let that go and be happier. But people will argue with me all the time. It's really funny. They'll go, but no, you don't understand, Colleen. And I'm like, yes, I do. I do understand.
You've probably been through similar things yourself.
Every magical mind game in this book is because I needed it. And these were accidentally created and compiled over 20 years, basically.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. I'll say, you can choose to hold on to it, or you can choose to let it go. You can choose to be happy. You can choose to take a different action. My fiance always says things to me like, well, people can choose to be right, or they can choose to be happy. Right? So we hold on to being right. I'm right and you're wrong. And I'm going to keep forcing this down your throat until you see my perspective, which they're never going to see. Or I can say, you know what, they don't get it, and let it go and be done with it in 2 seconds and feel so much better.
Yeah, it does seem like sometimes people don't comprehend what you're telling them.
Yeah, and that's not the time.
It's like our different brains work differently from each other. Everybody doesn't, everybody doesn't comprehend everything, I guess, is right. What I should say. It's like...
Yeah, and people get stuck a lot trying to change another person. If only they would apologize to me, I would feel better. if only they would act like this, then my life would be better. And I always say to them, you know, you can't change somebody else, right? I mean, we all know this, but some people don't know this. Some people don't want to do that.
Yeah, you know, I'm sitting here remembering something that happened, and it really wasn't anybody's fault. We were invited to, it was when my husband and I were first living together, the first few years, and maybe the first couple. And I remember we were invited to a Christmas holiday get-together, I think it was a Christmas Eve thing, at an aunt and uncle's of his. Well, we drove to their house, and they weren't there. And it just happened to be that the vehicle we had at the time, the heater wasn't working in it. So this turned into a very cold experience for us. You know, when we're young and didn't have much, and the heater wasn't working in the vehicle. And so then we drove over, that was in Bemis Point, and then we drove over to his mother's house in Falconer. We thinking that some of the relatives were going to be there, but nobody was there either. So, you know, we were locked out of there, and then, so we're trying to, you know, eventually there were people at the place where the party was going to be, but anyway, I remember after all that and feeling like I was freezing, you know, because it was Christmas time, and it was very cold, and I remember commenting to him, sometimes, you know, and this stemmed from my having been bullied when I was a kid, you know, and I come out with, sometimes I think that life is a joke on me and the whole world is in on it. I said that. And he grabbed a hold of my leg and he said, oh, it is not. He goes, it is not. He actually disagreed with me in a way to try to make me feel better. You know, it wasn't that anybody was trying to make us freeze or anything. Right. It's just that we probably should have waited longer to head on down to the get together. But you know, how were we supposed to know there'd be nobody there?
Right. And you know, so many people do feel like life is unfair and so hard and is against them. And then, you know, so people will say, well, how do I choose to look at that differently? You know, how can I look at that differently? And I like to joke back to people, because when I was in college, I had no money, and I remember searching for coins to buy food one day, and so I would always say to myself, if I was low on money, well, I haven't starved to death yet. You know, so there we go. Yeah. So I chose to look at it, you know, in a different way. But life changes, and so sometimes we just have to wait it out. Sometimes there is a survival mode, you know, but we choose to keep going. We choose to keep taking the steps, one step after another, and just do it. And when we claim that power of choice, then we do recognize we are responsible for how we're living our lives. We're responsible for what we believe to be true. You know, people have to open their mind to it. We can't change other people. They have to open their mind. Right now, with the way the world has been the last 2 years, oh my goodness, everybody is shifting. So many people through the pandemic, plus everything else that's happening with the political and societal unrest, basically.
Yeah, I don't understand well, I probably shouldn't bring up any names.
Well,
there's somebody who's being incredibly cruel right now.
There's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, yeah.
And what's happening, and slightly off track of the book, but not in a way, is that everybody is being forced to look at their lives and see who they really want to be. We're being forced to look at our lives and recognize if we enjoy what we're doing. Do we enjoy our lives? Are our lives giving us meaning? Because of the uncertainty of the pandemic, people had to learn to get more comfortable in the unknown. People have started to go, you know what, life is short. What do I want to make out of this? And so a lot of people are waking up to realize their life wasn't what they thought it was going to be, and they want a different kind of life. Also, a lot of people are waking up spiritually now, and they're recognizing there is more to life than the physical. You know, there is a divine energy of sorts. There's something out there. So people are embracing that more now. So they're kind of bringing up the light, if you will, which means the other part, the darkness, has to come to the surface as well, so the light can shine on it. So the darkness would be the mean people, the divisive society we have now, the people trying to control other people,
right.
The people trying to suppress them, and not to get into political things, but rewriting things so people, it's harder for them to vote. You know, this is the darkness that is being exposed in our society that has been there all along, but we didn't realize how entrenched it was. And now it's coming up. So what is happening is we are at a tipping point, actually, between the light and the dark. And so as people are waking up spiritually, for some of them, people are starting to embrace that there's a better way to live. And the better way to live is to be our courageous selves. And when I talk about courageous selves, I'm not talking about people who are speaking in their truth in a limited perspective, but speaking in their truth as who they really are at the soul level. And my belief is at the soul level, we are that light, we are the love, we are kind beings, we are a part of the divine. That is my belief system. My son said to me once, "You believe everybody is good?" I said, "Inside, I do believe everybody is good. That doesn't mean they project it all the time out there." But that's the thing. So sometimes people think, well, courageously you, I'm speaking my truth and I'm being a jerk about it, and that's who I am. And I'm like, that's not really who you are. Because who you are at the soul level is different. You are a being of kindness, caring, compassion. You just don't know that yet. And so a lot of the people who are waking up to the light are trying to help other people be their true selves. And that's what we want to be, is our true self, which is the nicer person, not the divisive, politically nasty people.
So,
we won't get into that.
Yeah. So I remember when I was younger and studying metaphysics, I remember the teacher, I remember him teaching us this little trick that we could do, where if we find ourselves agitated or worried or something like that, he taught us to watch our mind, and what you call the inner critic, you know, the one that feeds you all of the negative, the part that feeds you all the negative information. And he said to watch it while it's doing these things, and it will get embarrassed once it knows you're watching it, and stop doing it for a while until you're not paying attention again.
That's an interesting concept.
And you know, it's really funny because quite often when it was something that I was worried about, for example, if I would do that, if I would watch the mind playing these games with me, you know, could kind of go for a while into a kind of a non-worried state, and the next thing I would know is the problem would start resolving itself without me having to do anything about it. It was almost like it was magic by watching the mind doing what it does.
Yes, once you become aware.
Yeah.
I had a client yesterday, and this was wild. She was somewhat advanced and understood some of these concepts, and she said to me, "I'm perfectly aware of what's happening in my mind, but I don't know what to do about it." And I was like, okay, usually when I tell people to be aware, once they catch it and they see it, then it can change. They take a different direction, they make a different choice, whatever it is. I said, okay, so if you're aware of it, what happens after that? She goes, well, then I just keep doing whatever I'm doing. I said, okay, obviously you need to make a different choice. You know, I mean, hello, right? You know, and it is interesting. And I said to her, what if you were just curious? Like, what is your mind doing? Mm-hmm. Follow your mind, see what's happening in there. The problem is our mind will go without us being aware of it. We could be fine 1 minute, and a minute later, all of a sudden we're feeling badly and we don't know how we got there. So we have to backtrack and look at our mind. What happened? Well, this thought led to this thought, that led to this thought, that led to this thought. And then you can backtrack and go, oh, okay, I see what I did. And I told this client, I said, okay, so your inner critic is in full force. So let's name it. We're going to call it Judge Judy. So anytime you notice Judge Judy coming in there, you say, hey, Judge Judy, what are you doing here today? And then you've personalized it outside of yourself now. So now you're not connected anymore. So you can let go of the emotion that goes with it. You can recognize Judge Judy's just showing up for a minute, and then she can go away. And you can do this with anything that's showing up. Controlling Colleen, might be in there. Whatever it might be. And if we name it, it sets it outside of ourselves. So when we follow those thoughts, we can find out where we're heading. How is it telling us we're not good enough? There's always something in there. And then we name it and we can move it out. That's a really great strategy to get that out of your head.
Oh, yeah. There was another thing that I was trying to remember.
From the book?
From the book,
Here,
yeah.
wait, let's do this.
Oh, I know, the what if game.
The what if. I love the what if. That is like one of my favorite ones. I use it all the time. Whenever something happens that I don't like, what if what's happening is the best outcome? We have the negative what if. Oh, what if this, I have my flat tire, I get a flat tire. Oh, what if I'm late for work? Now I'm going to be late for work, and then they're going to get mad at me, and then they're going to yell at me, and then I'm going to get fired. All from a flat tire, we are now fired, which now leads us to homeless, right? From a flat tire.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the worries get more and more intense as you go through the steps of things that are going to happen because you had the flat tire.
Right, so we have this interpretation we automatically do. We don't even know we're doing it. And I have a whole way of changing that in there we're not going to talk about right now. But the what if, so I use this to stop that. What if what's happening is the best outcome? So I was in a car accident years ago and broke my arm, my collarbone, so I couldn't play my violin. And I was bummed out because we were playing this certain piece I'd been looking forward to playing for like 20 years. We hadn't played it in so long, right? Now I couldn't play it. So what you do is you just go, well, what if this is the best outcome? Okay, so what if I had been there, and what if one of those lights, those huge lights, came down from the ceiling and smashed right in front of me or hit me or something off the wall.
Something
totally
happened because you were there for the performance.
Right, so what if that was going to happen? So that's a silly one, right? And I talk the story. Something just fell behind me. Did you hear that? That was the funniest thing.
Just when you're talking
yes,
about
right after I talked,
like
something
that.
fell right back there, right behind me.
I don't know. I'll have to go look later when we're not fastened to our microphones anymore.
So I told a story in the book about coming back, dropping my daughter off for college. And I'd done this drive many a time, and I was trying to get back because of lake effect snow coming. And it was supposed to hit late afternoon, and I wanted to get back before it hit because you know how that goes. And so I was driving, and all of a sudden I realized I was on the wrong road. There was a spot where it had veered off. It had a fork.
You'd gone the wrong way.
And I had never noticed the other one before necessarily, and I took that one. I was now heading towards Rochester instead of west.
Oh, gosh.
And I had gone so far, it was too late to turn around. And so I'd been playing with the what if game by then, and I was like, well, what if this is the best route? There's a reason why I'm over on this route instead. I found out later, 86 is the road I was going to be on. There was so much snow from the lake effect snow. There were car accidents all over the place. The road ended up shutting down. All of this stuff happened exactly when I was going to be driving through there. So the what if is to reframe what's happening. You know, if I leave late, I left late one day to go someplace, and I left late, and I thought, oh, I'm going to be late for where I'm going, right? And what if I'm supposed to be? I just missed a car accident by leaving late. By seconds.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, it happened right in front of me. And if I had left those few seconds before, I would have been in that car accident. So what if this is the best outcome? And when you do this, it helps you look at the problem, the situation, from a different perspective and go, you know what? If it's the best outcome, I'm glad I don't have whatever could be worse. You know, so it could be worse. It's a twist on that could be worse.
Yeah, I remember having some close calls, like a tornado going through right behind me where I had just driven.
Yes.
That actually really did happen one time, you know, and it's like, Well, I guess, it wasn't my time,
Right.
So, and yet on the other hand, I was spellbound because I got to watch this thing move out onto the lake,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but I got to see this. I actually got to witness. I actually got to see a tornado move out onto Chautauqua Lake. And, it was just so interesting. I was just spellbound at the sight of the thing.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing. Timing is important.
Yes. Yes, it is.
I like to say everything is in order. Everything is in order. It's happening when it's supposed to happen. Stop trying to control it. Our misery, we create our own misery. We want things to be what we want them to be when we want them to be. And if we just let go of it and said, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm sure it'll be great when it happens, we would feel so much better. Easier said than done sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you're kind of wasting your time if you're thinking, well, after certain situations are behind me, then everything's going to be okay, except those situations keep coming up anyways. You're never totally free from it.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I talked to the client yesterday about that too and saying, my theory is everything that happens in life is there for us to practice being our true self. So we have a choice in how we respond to everything. We have a choice to respond and be kind. We have a choice to be mean. We have a choice to look at it as a learning opportunity. Mm-hmm. So I like to look at my life that way, which really helps me too when I have a struggle. And I go, okay, I'm learning something else. I don't know what it is right this minute, but I'll figure it out. And then it'll be a story in the next book.
You could just write a really interesting book on experiences you'd had, probably. I know I could, it seems like something, every time I turn around, I have an interesting experience of some sort.
Yes.
So
we have a lot of them.
You could just write, at least you could write about one one every week at least,
Yep.
So yeah, like those synchronistic things, synchronicity is a really interesting topic for me. The way things will just fall into place the way they're supposed to sometimes. If something was meant to be, that because it happened so easily that it was meant to be.
Yeah, if you're trusting the life process and not trying to control it, I think most of the time we're our own roadblock. We're the ones that make us miserable. We're the ones that get in our way if we just let life happen. It doesn't mean we don't take action and move towards something, a dream or a goal, but get out of our way and let it happen. It's amazing. It's so much better living that way.
Well, I hate to say it, and I can hardly believe that that the whole hour has gone by already. I remember I looked at the timer when it said there was like 2 minutes, like when it said about 5 minutes left, and all of a sudden,
it's going.
Wait a minute, what happened?
Well, just remind people that they can download Chapter 1 for free on my website.
Download, okay, what website is this?
ColleenVanderzyden.com.
ColleenVanderzyden.com.
You can also do BeCourageouslyYou.com, takes you to the same place, and you can download Chapter 1 for free.
Okay.
And read it and see if you like it before you buy it.
Right, that's a great idea. Mm-hmm. And I learned from this book that you apparently like cupcakes.
Yes, I do.
If I had had time yesterday, I would have made some for you, but that didn't work out. I wound up having to take one of my cats to the veterinarians because he was sick, and on and on. So anyway, thank you for coming on again, and I'll see those of you in the viewing audience on the next episode.